Hey friends, welcome back. Thanks so much for tuning in. We have back on the line the one, the only Andy Hoffman from Miles Franklin to discuss all things economics, Bitcoin, Ethereum, silver, gold, and the crashing markets. Will they crash? When will they crash? Is this bubble just going to go on forever? And Andy, I want to start with the quote of the year. It's from Dutch banking whistleblower Ronald Bernard, who says, "All misery on earth is a business model." Boy, was that a powerful new interview I just reported about. Andy, how are you?
Good. That sounds like a good tweet.
Yeah, it's a very good tweet and an excellent interview. Dutch banking whistleblower Ronald Bernard also says that this system is perfect for psychopaths. And he lays bare the pyramid of power in the world with the BIS at the very top, followed by the IMF and World Bank. Below them, the central banks, like the Federal Reserve and the ECB. Below them, the regular criminal banks, like Deutsche Bank, HSBC, etc. And below them, multinational corporations, and then the governments, and then we the people, which is why we the people continue to be mired essentially in debt slavery.
Well, the beauty of it is a variety of things are a confluence, a perfect storm of events never before seen in history are coming together to end this. The most important being that the fiat Ponzi scheme this is falling apart. That's why you have collapsing economic data and oversupply, and now you have political and social strife, and currencies have been serially collapsing, and it's getting to the point where the debt is so high right now that the true nature of the money printing that needs to go on forever is being seen, the cost of living. So, that's the first part of it, just the sheer weight of being around so long and held up solely by all this advanced technology that's enabled them to manipulate markets and keep the game going. But as we've been talking about forever, the precious metal physical markets are one of their key, call it the canaries in the coal mine, one of the Achilles heel, because once they run out of the ability to hold the price down and prices go up, it kind of exposes the fact that they're hyperinflating, and that's always been how fiat currencies have died throughout history. The problem is for them now, not for us, is that this is now, always said this was kind of a one front war that's being fought in the paper gold and silver markets, but now it's becoming a three front war, because not only are the physical markets migrating from west to east, so that they're increasingly having to deal with all the demand coming from China and Russia and other parts of the world that used to not be big powers in the gold market but are becoming very big ones. But they also have to deal with cryptocurrency, which ultimately I believe is going to be the next monetary system. Gold and silver will revert back to their primary roles of being a storage of value. But in now fighting against these cryptocurrencies that are taking a huge center stage right now, as people are starting to notice them. And I think as the monetary crisis expands and the interest in not only the interest in owning them, but also in understanding how they use them is going to be a major threat to this. What did the Bernard call it? The cancer that is in the system.
Yeah, the psychopaths. It's the perfect system for psychopaths. All misery on earth is a business model. And he cited some examples, what's going on in Syria, what was done to Greece specifically. All by design, all misery on earth is a business model of these bankers. And as we're having this conversation today on the 13th of June, Ethereum is at 391, Bitcoin is at 2735, silver is back down below 17 at 1675, and gold is at 1265. And Deutsche Bank, you'll appreciate this, Andy, the international criminal bank known as Deutsche Bank, calculates the fair price of gold at $1,015. Again, just more nonsense from these criminals.
Right, and you're talking about that it's a policy of misery, and I would say that fiat money has nothing to do with intent to injure. It has to do with an intent to become wealthy and maintain control. And it's obviously at the expense of the 99%. That's always been throughout history. I don't think it's intended to hurt people. I think it's intended to just accumulate wealth and power. And throughout history, it's generally worked. I mean, it's ironic to say it's worked because all of the 1,000+ fiat currency regimes have miserably failed. But since there's been no replacement, no one has thought of any other way of doing it. They just keep doing the same mistakes over and over again. And of course, this time around, it's because of this technology that's enabled it to be kind of a global trading and communication world. This is the first time ever we've had a fiat Ponzi scheme where it's the entire world is stuck in it all at the same time. And of course, they're anchored by the US dollar, which is, slowly but surely losing its global hegemony. So I think the fact is that aside from this being the biggest pyramid, the biggest top-heavy, most vulnerable and unstable fiat currency system ever, they're now fighting a whole new enemy. And I really, truly believe that it won't take long. I mean, I look at the pace of uptake of technologies of all kinds, just the pace of change in the way we do things as a culture and as a world. And I see it's almost like the Satoshi guy was godlike in that he's anonymous and no one knows how it came about that this fiat money killer came out of nowhere, from no particular person or entity, just Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever that is. And I'm really encouraged. I've said to people for some time now, for more than a year, that cryptocurrency is the best ally that precious metals have ever had, because as you could see, it's still very, very hard to fight these guys, no matter how much physical they drain, although we're getting close to the point where that does matter. But this is going to really move the game forward, because right now it's a matter of speculation. People are buying these things because they're going up, but they're not realizing that the uptake around the world, especially in places that have already had their currencies destroyed, are desperate for particularly Bitcoin, but they're also starting to look at the other ones because they realize this is a game changer for monetary policy around the world and for the people. Truly, and I truly mean this, I'm not just saying this, this is how the people are going to take back the monetary system. They're going to own physical gold and silver to store their value, and they're going to use cryptocurrencies so they can get away from the government regulations and the debt slavery that you're talking about that have caused, you're talking about that, all these bad things are policy. But, I would say that fiat monetary regimes, along with religious crusades, and someone said, did you mean the crusade? No, I mean religious crusades in general. Those are the two most destructive things that man has wrought upon the world. And I think we have the chance to destroy at least one of them within a decade, in my opinion.
Well, I want to say a couple things, and I want to address the cryptos and give you my opinion on something I think I've been thinking about a lot lately, especially since these past couple of corrections that last about a day or less than a day in the cryptos. But Ronald Bernard also made note, and I knew this, but he reminded me of the fact that when the Catholics ran Europe, usury interest rates were illegal and punishable by death. It wasn't until these bankers took over and implemented such usurious tactics and these exorbitant interest rates and installed their central banks that they began to enslave entire societies and nation states and we the people to unrepayable debt. I find it fascinating. I just bring that up because you mentioned the Crusades and the religious crusades. Under the Catholics, usury was illegal and punishable by death. Of course, the bankers run the show now, so that's all changed. Now, I want to address something about the cryptos. I've been noticing that these corrections are very short-lived, and it's for this reason, Andy. I find it very fascinating. For anybody thinking about wading into the cryptos who hasn't yet, just think about what I'm about to say here. Wall Street's only open 6 or 7 hours a day, right? The cryptocurrency space is a 24/7, 365 market. So the fair price, the market price, is constantly being found. It's not as though they crash and then everybody has to go to bed wondering what's going to happen when the market opens the next day, and then the bankers make them crash again. Because the market price is always being found. They can't plummet to zero. Do you follow what I'm saying? I just think it's a fascinating market because it's open 24/7.
Well, I have a few thoughts on that. First of all, we need to discern the difference between Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, because for the most part, I wouldn't even. It's hard for me to even call them. Yes, they are cryptocurrencies, and they do have blockchains, although some are more decentralized, and some are proof of work versus proof of stake. There's all different kinds, but for the most part, most of them are really just speculations, especially because the vast majority are companies. I mean, they have a CEO and a headquarters, and yeah, a government could shut them down pretty easily. They could walk into Ethereum's office and shut them down if they want to. There's a big difference between that and a decentralized network that doesn't have a company or a headquarters or a CEO or a board like Bitcoin. And two, to say, the cryptos are all going to move up. Well, they're in a bull market now, and I guess it's in a lot of ways it's analogous to like the Nasdaq in the late 90s. But they are very, very different. And there are going to be many that crash and burn and many that don't even have business models. A lot of them are just along for the ride. Everyone's buying these ICOs, so everyone's just selling them, pumping them, and dumping them. And right now, there's been huge demand for them. The second part of that was, these corrections are short, but they may not always be short. There's going to be some pretty big ones. I mean, look, Bitcoin itself has had some huge ones after the Mt. Gox that lasted several years. A lot of these companies that are going to have massive problems haven't had problems yet. So you're going to see on an individual basis plenty of long-term separation and bear markets. And in the case of Bitcoin, the reason it's particularly volatile is because there's very little outstanding. And that'll get me to the third part of this question is, look, there's only 16 million that have ever been mined. Probably 2 or 3 million are lost forever. Probably half of the rest of them are in strong hands that aren't selling. And believe me, selling it isn't as easy as you think. In fact, buying or selling it isn't very easy. And as many people saw yesterday, when Coinbase, which is probably the biggest exchange, certainly in the United States, crashed, and no one could do anything. And believe me, I've been in Coinbase for years. It's always like that. They are a terrible exchange, and they're the biggest. So there's a variety of reasons why it's extremely volatile, and it can have corrections, especially when it just had this parabolic run. But yes, in the case, and they're going to have issues. They have the scaling debate. There's a huge, huge issue going on with a potential soft fork on August 1st. There's always, there's these bad actors out there that are trying to hard fork it. There's governments that are constantly coming in and trying to regulate. The Chinese have done so unsuccessfully. But I assure you others will be doing so. The United States at some point will come in and try to regulate. And while they will fail, they will certainly cause a lot of, as you call them, short-term corrections. And some of them may be a lot longer. But the fact is, the first part of what you said was, when it comes down to financial markets, we have gotten so, and I'm a Wall Street analyst by trade and a CFA, and I worked on Wall Street for 20 years. We're trained to analyze markets. But as we've learned in the precious metal markets, and now in all the markets, they're all 100% rigged. Technical analysis, with the exception of, for instance, like the 5.5-year downtrend line I've been following in gold and silver, and the 200-week moving average, these really, really long-term factors that are hard to manipulate do matter somewhat. But short-term, absolutely meaningless. The stock market, the bond market, the precious metal markets, because they're so blatantly and in many cases overtly manipulated. The thing is with Bitcoin, though, and these cryptocurrencies, I watch them like a hawk, and you know what? They act normal. I mean, yes, there is the ability to short them, to borrow them, only on a handful of exchanges. So, and there's obviously no governments in there. How's the government even going to be able to? You can't really short it. If they ever try to buy a position, they would take the price way up. So when you watch these things, believe me, they act real. They act like stock markets used to act, like real markets acted. So when you see it have these movements, they are pretty much genuine, and that's really exciting to me, because that is in itself a form of price discovery that we have not seen in many years in the markets. And as I tell people, particularly in precious metals, I truly believe when the cartel starts to break down, you're going to actually see actual gold and silver market movements the way they should be, and obviously they're going to be at much higher levels.
Yeah, I don't think I made my point very eloquently, but you recapped that beautifully, because basically what I was trying to say is that it is a real market. What we're seeing is a real market here in these cryptos, because unlike the other markets, unlike, for instance, the silver and gold market, where there's an electronic silver fix, where they fix the price, and unlike all the shorting that can be done on Wall Street, you're right, these things are trading freely. And I'm of the belief that, because you know what the real bubble is, Andy? The real bubble is the mountains, the trillions upon trillions of fiat floating around this planet, not just the US dollar. The yuan, the yen, and all of that money is looking for places to go. And I just think that the crypto space is a very interesting story that will continue to follow, because Ethereum and Bitcoin combined right now still, I think, are around a market cap of only $100 billion. That's chump change based on how much fiat's out there.
Right. And of course, Ethereum and Bitcoin, let's just get it out there. They're completely different things. Yes, you can lump them together as the one and two cryptocurrencies, but they have very little in common. They may both succeed wildly. I have more confidence in Bitcoin, although they both will have challenges, but they are completely different. And yes, combined, they are probably about $85–90 billion and rising, which is a great thing. And just generally speaking, I think that money, all that fiat around the world, is rapidly starting to understand that this is a way to change the system. And it's, to me, the most exciting thing I've ever come across. Yeah, honestly, I've said the two biggest inventions of our lifetime are the internet and Bitcoin. And when it comes to precious metals, it's particularly exciting to me because I know how much it's going to help. We talk about how archaic things are and how archaic the thought processes are. And again, in my own sector, I wrote, "Is gold money? Who cares?" 3.5 years ago, because I laugh at the thought of a gold standard, because governments have destroyed every single currency regime they've ever controlled, whether it's fiat or a gold standard. I mean, here we had FDR, he took everyone's gold. We had Nixon, what he did, he abandoned the gold standard. You go back to Roman times of clipping coins. And now with all that these governments have done, all the lying and cheating and stealing, we're going to trust that A, they have the gold that they say, and B, they're going to administer a system. There's not a chance. More importantly, the people won't trust it. And that's why I laugh at, things like Jim Rickards with his SDR, like, oh yeah, the whole system of fiat's going to fall apart. So the same people that everyone lost trust in are going to get together and say, yeah, let's put together another fiat currency that just puts together all these other currencies, as if they're all going to even listen to each other, as if the people from the East would even care what the people in the West have to say, and they're the ones that have the power. The whole thing is silly. There's not going to be a gold standard, and no matter how much people want to say that gold and silver are these great mediums of exchange, they are not. They are great stores of value. Yes, they are the medium exchange of last resort, but it's not like people are going to be able to walk around the world handing people gold coins in exchange for things. And yes, people say, well, we've created a system where we can store your gold and you can buy, you can use it to buy. But that's the same problem we have now. That's a third party storage operator, and that's not what you want. If there's one thing we're learning, it's that you want to hold your own gold and silver, or keep it with someone like, for instance, Brinks Canada, who you really trust. And obviously, in the case of the cryptos, you definitely keep your private keys so that no one else can have control over them. And I think that's going to free up gold and silver for what they have always been used for, which is to store value. There's never been anything on the planet that's ever been discovered that has monetary properties. Nothing, not a single thing. Things that, yes, you can say, well, I buy real estate, but that's not money. It's just something that, well, it may keep value and it may not, but only gold and silver have done that. And unless alchemy is real, which it's not, they're not going to be able to find anything else. So it's going to be, and again, you're talking about all the currencies out there sloshing around looking for things to go. That's what kills me when people go, well, you can't have Bitcoin because only gold is store of value. And I'm going, so you're saying that, first of all, there's not that much gold out there. Even if everyone wanted it, they couldn't get it. But right now people diversify into stocks, bonds, real estate, fine art. What, they couldn't diversify the trillions and trillions of dollars in yuan and yen and euros and Swiss francs and rand into two tiny little nothing markets? Of course they're going to diversify. There's only a handful of things out there that have ever had monetary properties. And as far as I've seen in my lifetime, only gold and silver had them until Bitcoin came along. And Bitcoin is going to be, as I wrote, a twin destroyer of the fiat currency regime as it becomes more and more powerful. And it's going to free up gold and silver, and it's going to liberate it eventually. It's to be like getting a turbo, like the gold and silver, we're shooting slingshots at the cartel right now. But once Bitcoin gets more powerful, we'll have like laser guns and bombs to shoot at the cartel.
All right. Well, we'll keep an eye on that space, of course. And as we round out the conversation, I'm going to circle back to Ronald Bernard, the Dutch banking whistleblower, who said that the Bank for International Settlements pretty much sets the directives for the pyramid below. So They set the directives for the IMF and the World Bank, and then below them, the central banks like the ECB and the Federal Reserve. So let's just ask ourselves, I wonder what these narratives and directives are. I know that you're working hard here on today's article. It's called The Fed's Last Rate Hike. Based on what the Fed's up to, what do you think the Bank of International Settlements is telling these central banks? What are these clowns up to, and how are they going to save this system?
Well, yes, that article probably is out by now, and I'm talking about tomorrow's FOMC meeting. Look, the only reason they're raising rates is kind of a boy who cried wolf. We're going to act tough and act like we're in control and everything's good. But more importantly, because the PPT has been able to, since the election, go berserk, creating this, as I call it, dot-com valuations in the Great Depression era. And as long as they believe that they can raise rates without the stock market crashing, they don't care about the consequences. They don't care or even realize that what they're doing is causing the destruction in the economy. I mean, GDP is like zero. Retail sales is collapsing. Capital expenditures, debt exploding. The government finances are falling apart. All this stuff. So they think that they've been trying to do this, and they're going to run out of the rope today, because right now the economy is in free fall. And even these little minuscule rate hikes that they've done, which will finally get them to 1% tomorrow for the first time since, I don't know, in 10 or 12 years, that they've been doing a lot of damage. And it's gotten to the point where it's almost a joke now. Everyone knows they're not going to raise rates anymore. Frankly, most people are still wondering how on earth we got a situation where they're going to raise rates into, a Great Depression era. But yeah, they'll do it, and that'll be the end of it. And consider that they've been smashing gold every time in front of these rate hikes, and every time gold goes up when there's a rate hike. In fact, the ultimate bottom for gold, probably the ultimate bottom for all time, in December 2015, was the day that the Fed raised rates for the first time. So I have a feeling that what's going on right now, aside from them fighting, as I call the 200-week moving average war, for gold that's 1274, and silver it's 1775, and the 5.5-year downtrend line war. Actually, sorry, the 200-week for gold is only 1240, so it's way above it. But the 5.5-year downtrend line, going back to the attacks of 2011, it's 1274 for gold, and in silver's case, it's 1630, so it's above it. So aside from fighting these two very long-term resistance lines, which we're very close right now, and we are going to break out, and it's going to get the attention of a lot of traders. They're trying to prime us in front of this Fed meeting tomorrow, which is just like the ECB meeting last week, is going to be wildly dovish. I'm telling you right now, there's no way that they're going to say. I mean, look, they said in there, and those minutes are always doctored. But they just put out the minutes from the May meeting. They said we need more evidence that the drop in the economy is transitory before we do anything, which is why it's saying, well, so why would you raise rates now when everything's falling apart? Well, they're definitely going to be saying that going forward. So I think it's going to be a big dove fest tomorrow. And I truly believe, per today's article, that this is the last rate hike you'll ever see in the United States until the bond vigilantes come, because we have real hyperinflation fears somewhere down the road.
Yeah, hyperinflation fears, as John Williams has been talking about for a very long time. I'm surprised we haven't seen it yet, but maybe that is what we're seeing in these cryptos, is we're seeing a lot of the dollars go into the crypto space. I think eventually we're going to see it go into the gold and silver space too, Andy. I mean, they can't keep these prices capped forever. So we'll round out the discussion with your thoughts on precious metals and how people can get them from you.
Exactly. And, the main reason they're not buying them now, look, they are buying them in the East hand over fist. They're not buying them here because we're in these historic bubbles, and they're not as focused on them. And more importantly, simply because gold and silver haven't been going up. I mean, they've been barely going up. But, when you're looking at all these other rigged markets going up, from stocks to bonds, which they should never go up together, but in a rigged market they are in real estate, no one's paying attention. They're paying attention. Most of the people paying attention to cryptos now in the Western world, in the rest of the world, people are buying because they're desperate. But here they're just buying them because they're going up. But eventually they're going to be buying them for the same reasons they're buying them in the rest of the world. And that's going to, foster a lot of money that shifts away from the traditional financial markets. And some of that money is also going to go into precious metals. And all it takes is any kind of modest breakout. Like if gold goes above 1,300 and silver gets above $20 again, that's the main thing people care about right now. And once it goes, there'll be a huge amount of buying. And, with each day that there's suppression and the mining industry is destroyed and the currencies are destroyed, we're that much closer to, a real short squeeze, like we've seen in palladium of all places. So we'll see it in gold and silver, and people will be talking about them just the way they're talking about cryptocurrencies now, because they're going up.
All right, why don't you shout out the phone number for your company there, Miles Franklin?
Right, Miles Franklin, our 28th year of business without a registered complaint. You can call us at 800-822-8080. Go to milesfranklin.com to get my free blog every day, or to sign up for online purchasing, or you can email me at ahoffman@milesfranklin.com.
All right, very good. And friends, I want to thank you so much for your support, especially my patrons over at Patreon SGT Report. You're really making a huge difference for us, so thank you so much. And thanks to all of you for tuning in today. And Andy, thanks for your time.
Always a pleasure.
Always a pleasure. And guys, thanks for tuning in for real news 24/7 to sgtreport.com, the corporate propaganda antidote. Have a terrific week. God bless.
What we really should have in the Seth Rich investigation is another Watergate-scale congressional investigation. What we're going to get instead is another Vince Foster-style cover-up.